Hey there, this is Perch. This is almost an epilogue to Heroes in Crisis. I've done a couple reviews. It's been a topic a lot of people have been wanting to talk about, and it makes sense. It's an event. I mean, people kind of forget it was an event comic. It had the word crisis in it. It was meant to be at least somewhat controversial in terms of how events are always a little controversial. They shake things up and disrupt the status quo. And the topic has been talked to death in a couple areas, and I get the feeling like this interview is actually a few days old, but was reprinted on a couple news NEWZ sites, um, kind of trying to stir up controversy around a statement Tom King made, where he basically stated that he crafted the story and he came up with the setting and the scenario, and then the editors told him the characters that they wanted to use for it. Now, you got to kind of deconstruct. We'll do it like Tom King says. We deconstruct our heroes. Let's deconstruct that statement a little bit, because a lot of people are flying off the handle about it in the wrong way, or they're just forgetting some things as they do so. So, first of all, it's not unusual for a writer to come up with a story pitch or an idea and have editorial or the chief creative officer, any number of people, kind of come in and make adjustments to it, and or pick the characters that are actually being used in the story. Classic case, if you go back to Civil War that Mark Miller did, there was a long dialogue with Joe Quesada and Tom Brevoort and Miller around characters that are going to be used. And Miller initially wanted to bring the Hulk in, and kind of a lot of the story beats from World War Hulk happen in Civil War as kind of an extra little kind of twist. And there are some different characters that they wanted to kill as well. And so, and there was some things left open, and Brevoort recommended, certain aspects, and they talked about not bringing the Hulk in. They talked about, who should be killed, and Miller kind of set up, and then we kill a character and didn't specify who. And Editorial was one who picked Goliath, and so this is not unusual. Now, you may or may not like the practice, but it's not unusual in comics, and I don't even think it's a bad thing. I think a writer can come and pitch a character-driven story, one where, like a Batman Year One or a Flash Year One or so on, or a writer can come in and pitch a setting, I'm imagining like Tom King did, which was, I want to explore superhero trauma and what happens with these giant characters where, in a second they can cause, massive harm. And so there's need, especially for the superpowered superpower characters, the really powerful ones, where if they just kind of nod off at the wheel, instead of the car just going into the ditch, the car could destroy a building, a city. That any tiny mistake made by somebody at that power level is catastrophic. And what does that do to people's minds? And what does that do to kind of how they tackle things? And I think that's probably the hook he gave DC for the event. And I think there's nothing wrong with that hook. I don't think he has to figure out, who's going to be used for what. And he didn't. That is, in his words, an editorial recommended, okay, it's going to be Booster, it's going to be Harley, it's going to be Wally. And part of that may be just the overall shuffling. I think Editorial's probably thinking, okay, we have Rebirth, we brought back Flash, but Wally kind of had a weird run in Titans, and then we don't really know what to do with him. We have this issue that he's remembering his family, and he's kind of losing control. We went through that storyline of Flash, and where does he go from here? I think that's how Editorial was setting up the dominoes of kind of how they wanted to fall. And the last domino to fall is they wanted a reason to kind of position Wally into Suicide Squad. And that was, for whatever reason, maybe there's a movie tie-in coming there, or maybe it just makes sense to have a higher profile character in Suicide Squad. So, for whatever it's worth, that's what Editorial wanted to do. And so they place it to King. So that's a long-winded way of saying this isn't a weird practice. It's not unusual. It's not a knock against King to say, hey, I just did the story, but somebody else picked the characters. Now, but remember, we're deconstructing his statements. That's one side of looking at it. But then the second side of looking at it is to say, yeah, okay, that's fine. But once the characters are picked for you as a writer, I think you have a responsibility to make sure that these characters, one, fit the story you've created. Does it truly fit? If you're going to explore superhuman trauma, does it fit? And the answer with Wally was probably yes. He came in as this kind of forgotten remnant of a dimension or world gone away. He's lost a big part of his family, and that's a big deal for him. And he's coping with a lot in the recent storylines in Flash. He's coping with some pretty massive things, and so he probably does fit the bill pretty well and fits naturally into the story. But there's other things to consider, and whether this is on King or on the editorial, on everyone, um, it was identified somewhere within DC that the grim nature of the New 52, certain aspects of how it tore at kind of longtime fans was a negative. That decision was made that there were some negatives there, and they wanted to repair that with Rebirth. And we know this. This isn't speculation. We know this is true because this is exactly the words that came out of Jeff Johns and Dan Didio and Jim Lee's mouths when they were promoting Rebirth. That's exactly what they said. And so the symbol of this kind of return to kind of basically attract the long term fans and make good on a promise to them to care about their needs was Rebirth, and it was visualized in Wally. Wally West was going to be the character that was going to be the symbol of this rebirth. So about 2 years later, to have that symbol kind of transformed into kind of a broken, torn person who goes on a mass killing spree, feels bad about it, tries to kill himself, and ultimately is sent to prison to be part of the Suicide Squad. That's a bad editorial move. It's just bad marketing. It's bad planning. It's being tone deaf to the thing you said you weren't going to be tone deaf to anymore. It's just a bad decision. That doesn't rest on Tom King's shoulders. I mean, a little bit. You're a company man. You've got an exclusive with the company. You're a high profile writer who's getting higher profile gigs, and you're a big deal inside the company. So I think some of it does rest on your shoulders. There's probably a moment where you should have raised your hand and said, "Hey, I'm your best selling writer, and I'm telling you this is a mistake. This doesn't align to kind of the promise we tried to make in the comic, and this is a bad idea." I think that he should have done that. I think that that is something that rests on his shoulders, but it's a shared blame for everyone. And unpacking a statement further, though, I think it's kind of along the same lines as you be a company man. There's a little bit, whether he meant it this way or not, and I'm going to give him the benefit of that. I do not think he meant it this way. But the interview itself is odd because it comes across like King is basically saying, "Hey, it wasn't my fault. These things happened. You can't blame me. I am who I am. I deconstruct characters. I tear them down. I try and bring them up, and then Editorial gave me these characters to ran, so I ran with them, and I'm a big Wally fan, but these are the cards I was handed." That doesn't ring true. Whether Tom King has enough clout or not to make a different decision, that's one question. But the other one is, again, that being a company man is it's not a good look to just roll on the company and say, hey, it was all on them. I mean, ultimately, the words came out of your laptop, your typewriter, your Word 95, whatever it happens to be. And so I think there's a certain level of just was this the best call for the company? Both the story that was written and then the interview that was given about the story that was written. It's just kind of an odd bit of choices. So I don't know. Um, I'm still puzzled over this interview, and like I said, it's going to get picked at and torn apart and worked on quite a lot over the coming weeks. And because this story was divisive and more in a negative way than the positive way, and I don't think it's that fans were not ready to have a story about trauma. I think fans can handle dark things, everything else. I think the comic was very decompressed in a lot of ways. It had a lot of kind of odd timing in terms of comedy, and I think it, I think that, like I said in kind of the other videos, there's things that are additive, there's things that are subtractive, and I think even if you like the story, and more power to you if you did. I think that's great when people like things. I try and make this point clear a lot in my reviews, and I never am sure if I land it well, but I personally, not just because I sell them, I personally am happy when people like things, even if it's something I absolutely hate. I'm happy when they like things because this is somebody who's getting something out of the story. This is somebody who put down money and bought a story and read it and enjoyed it, and that makes me happy. I take that happiness above my own feelings of the book. If I personally don't like it, okay, that's whatever. That's on me. That's my personal feeling. I'm in control myself. I just don't read it over and over if I didn't like it. But when somebody else likes something, I think that's great. And I think if you can identify what it is you liked about it, what it is you got out of the story, even better. Now you can find more things that you like and want to read. But this was, Heroes in Crisis was a weird book. It came at I think a lot of it came at a weird time. The timing of it was probably just off, and if you go back and take the 30,000 foot view, coming at the same time that Batman was getting deconstructed in kind of a depressing way, I think that's kind of some bad timing. I think that both the character that was used plus Rebirth was kind of a bad thing. I mean, to put this way, let's say you had the exact same story, except instead of Wall, you had Captain Atom in there. I think it would have came off a lot better, just kind of based on the timing of the characters and what they'd been through, and kind of the mea culpa that DC had done a few years earlier. But I think that the important thing that I was trying to get out of this video is, let's get some perspective. It's not abnormal for writers to pitch a story idea and not have characters in mind for it. And that's where editorial, it should be a team. When you're working at a big publisher, it's a team effort. So it makes sense that the team is contributing to pick the character and pick some of the settings and kind of shape the story. It's happened for decades, not weird, not unusual. The bigger question I have is not, you know, why is King rolling on his team, or is this true? Was it really a team effort or not? It's more, I'm taking it as true that this was a team effort, that it was as Tom King describes. There's no reason for Tom King to lie about it. I mean, you might say, oh, it's got a lot of negative, reaction now, so he's trying to pass the buck. Yeah, but Tom King, both in person and other interviews, I mean, say what you like about him. I think he's a stand-up guy. I think he does say kind of what's on his mind. He loves trolling the audience and playing kind of psyops with some of the fans, and that's a whole different matter. But his trolling and his psyops are interesting because they're always honest. They're misleading with what he does. I mean, but that's how you get to learn whether you're a part of a scam or not, is you read his words and read very carefully his words. And that will tell you if this is a joke or not, or if this is, because he doesn't come right out and lie. So I don't think he's lying about this at all. I don't think this is a covering his butt kind of situation. I think he's describing it as intended and as it happened. I think that begs the question: should he be doing that at all? Is the timing right to be, coming off like you're passing the blame? Probably not. But I mean, assuming all that's true, I think my bigger question is why did so many people drop the ball? In the sense that we can beat up on Tom King for what he did to Wally all you want, but yeah, one thing that should come to mind is there's an editor in chief, there's creative officer, there's a lot of other people who heard this story, heard this pitch, heard where it was going, and gave it a thumbs up. I mean, you could say I have, responsibility is in the individual. When you go to your job, you work at McDonald's and you decide you're going to spit in every burger you make. You will get fired, and you're doing the wrong thing, and you shouldn't be doing that. But if you do this for months, if you do this for 3 to 4 months, then the guilt starts to spread a little bit to the assistant manager, the manager, all your coworkers who are watching you spit in the burger. I mean, at some point you have to look at it and say, Yeah, but there's a lot of people whose job it is to control quality and kind of make sure things don't go off the rails with the burger. So, what were those people doing? And I think that's a legitimate question, and I think one that we should be considering. Is it's fun to go after a person, Tom King, but there are a lot of names on that book that all said, you know what, yeah, Wally, go for it. Names that I'm not saying go blame Didio for everything. I'm just saying um, there's other names who touted Rebirth and touted what they're doing with Wally and the spirit of optimism and how they're going to restore faith with the fans who gave a thumbs up to this one. So you gotta. My question is, how did that happen? How did so many people say, yeah, yeah, no problem? And I think that's what I take away from this, and That's what I would recommend you take away with it too. Like, what do we know about the business? What have we learned from all this? Anyway, that's my take. I'm moving on from Heroes in Crisis, but that's another aspect of it that I thought was kind of interesting. I wanted to pass along. Hey, as usual, like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, tell a friend. Thanks for listening. Yeah, thanks for listening. Always.